Hello, this is an honor to be with Tony DeMatteo here on what is the date today? It's Wednesday,
Hi,
June 25th, 2025. And I'm pleased to be with Tony DeMatteo. We've spoken, Tony, about the difference between inheritance, that with which we leave for someone, for our family and loved ones, versus legacy, those things, those characteristics that we leave in someone. And so we spoke earlier about why should we do this kind of conversation, have this kind of interview conversation, and it's for your legacy. So with that as kind of a preface, let me have you introduce yourself, Tony. Can you tell me who you are and how we happen to meet even?
Ron. For the people that follow Ron, is not to be hyperbolic, is a quintessential altruistic gentleman whose motives are nothing but helping people. And getting back to how we met, Ron has been a big supporter of my son Mario. And I've been around him. We had him over for dinner. However, he's never reciprocated in having us over to his mini mansion in where do you live? Encinitas?
Solana Beach.
Solana Beach. Are you
Solana
on the
Beach.
coast there? Are you on the coast?
Yes, we're on the coast. Well, we're close to the coast.
All right.
We have a somewhat of an ocean view, but I want to circle back to you, Tony, because you are the subject of this discussion here. So, can we talk about Mario and your life? But maybe start
Sure.
by talking about, where were you born? And
I was born in the Bronx, New York. Now, the Bronx, and during that time, 1943, was primarily immigrants from Italy. The whole neighborhood of that area of the Bronx. And although I only lived there 13, 12 years, the formative years of my life were formed, to be redundant, but some of my characteristics are from the Bronx, from the Italian American section of the Bronx. My grandparents were from the Naples area, and that has a distinctive culture, a lot of which people criticize. Those are the people that don't appreciate fine culture and La Familia. And one of the things that I don't want to get into, but so many people categorize Italian Americans as being mob related, and that's BS because Italian Americans have significantly contributed to the culture and success of this country. Uh, I lived in this neighborhood. Fordham University was close to it. So they called it the Fordham area, or there's a famous street called Arthur Avenue, and that's Little Italy in the Bronx, which is more authentic than the Little Italy in Manhattan on Mulberry.
talk about your parents, Tony. What were their names?
My father was Mario, and that's one of the traditions, probably in a lot of different nationalities, is honoring your father by naming your children after the mother or father. So that was my father's name, Mario. And my mother was Florence. And my daughter, Gina, his middle name is Florence. So she goes by Gina Flo a lot, just to be
Hmm.
kind of cute, which she's a beautiful lady.
What were your parents like growing up? What's your earliest memory of your growing up years with your parents?
Very family oriented. We'd have dinner every night. together when we moved from the Bronx, New York, and moved to California. Uh, we actually lived in a Quonset hut.
Mm,
Was a federal federal government support of veterans, and he was a World War II veteran. And this Quonset hut was like a Quonset hut, very small, but the demographics of Roger Young Village, who was a war hero, if I'm not mistaken, but very diversified ethnicity of the residents. So
mm.
an exposure to every different nationality in the United States. And it was a good learning experience because you didn't differentiate who's who. Went to a Catholic school up on Los Feliz, famous street in Los Angeles. But the family gatherings every night, we'd have dinner, peasant like.
Do you have brothers and sisters, Tony?
I have a brother and three sisters. Uh, and the two, uh, one brother and were the youngest, and the sister wasn't living with us during that time at Roger Young Village, where we were all cramped into this Quonset hut, eating peasant food every night. Uh,
Mm,
Not to be overly dramatic, but rice and beans, lentil soup, uh, pasta for sure. And the big day was on a Saturday when we would have a cheap cut of meat, a round steak,
mm.
did to smithereens and baked with some tomato sauce on it. And they have a name for that, but uh, some of the great memory, and a salad, of course. My mother would oil and vinegar, and somehow it came out pretty good. She was a very mediocre cook. My father, my
What
father
were your brothers and sisters' names for the record?
We have Johanna, uh, named after my grandmother, Giovanna. It's kind of a derivative of that. And Maria, Saint Mary, very Catholic oriented family with the names. My brother was Albert, named after my father's father, who went by the name Don Albert, D-O-N.
Mm.
And who am I missing? Elena. And I don't know for sure who she was named after. They all went to, the two girls went to a Catholic school in Woodland Hills, but that's down the road after we moved from the Quonset up to another middle or lower class income area, Pacoima,
Ah, so
California.
who's the oldest? Who's the oldest?
I
What's
am.
the
I
ranking? You're the oldest.
I am.
And do you remember your grandparents, your parents' parents?
I had two sets of grandparents, both alive. They were all alive at the time, and uh, they came from Naples and another southern part of Italy, south of that, called Calabria. And my mother, for some reason, thought being from that area was a little upper class because there was a French uh, attachment somewhat, and she thought being French was higher class than being Southern Italian. She spoke a dialect along with my father, but my father did speak a formal Italian, taught him,
Mm,
went to school and learned. And also, New Yorkers sometimes get overly categorized as a these, dems, and those guys, but he spoke English
mm,
that you couldn't discern what part of the country, whereas my mother spoke very New Yorkish
mm.
and was proud of it.
What did you learn from your parents, from your father? Who is more influential in your formative years, your father or your mother?
My mother,
In what ways?
and she was very conscious of money and how to save it. Later on, when I was working as a busboy, I'd come home with the tips, which were pretty good, and she would give herself two-thirds of it as learning how to save. My father learned that he was had a very strong work ethic and was very concerned about providing a good living, showing good example to his children, loving family, loving your family. Very good to my mother, and her name was Florence. But my mother, some of the influences about the work ethic were very strong. Getting an education, uh, and she had somewhat of a gruff, if there's such a word, but not abrasive, but very outspoken and asking for the order. So that
Hmm.
yeah, sales technique that you learn from being in the Bronx, and you have to stick up for yourself. And so a little anecdote when my mother passed, Catholic funeral, and at the church with all the friends of the family, I asked anybody if they would object to me canonizing my mother. So
Hmm.
the definition of what a saint is, and I canonized her, despite, I think, the priest in the background waving his hand. And I said, "Thank you, Father." And so she's Saint Florence.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's quite a legacy that she sounds like she passed on in terms of responsibility for you and your siblings. Um,
Awesome, awesome mother, and the children were her priority. I mean, I'm 45 years old at one time and would come up and visit them while working, and she'd rub my feet. Oh, come on.
hmm.
That's so
That's great.
I have a couple of angels on my bench where we live in Bonsall now, California.
Hmm.
Uh, and not to dismiss my father, his work ethic certainly was a great example for me to not take the easy way out. And with that and my mother's influence, uh, I learned a lot and was is a good family man and an earner and providing things for my children that made their life a little easier, even though they're both strong work ethic people. Gina and Mario both have masters. They're educated, and I'm very proud of them. And they are my life along with my mother, not my mother and my wife. And this whole concept of La Familia is part of what I think is the most important thing in my life and dealing with my family that supersedes anything.
Hmm.
And uh, so when we talk about legacy, that I hope would be my legacy to them, that I was all about them, providing them whatever, not material things, but life lessons that they could learn from. May I?
Sounds like it, Tony. So when you were growing up then in New York, it sounds like you ended up moving to California. Was that how old were you when you moved to California?
12, 13.
12 or 13. What did that feel like when you 12 or 13? That's a pretty formidable time. You must have been like in I don't know, seventh or eighth grade before high school. Did you uh, re did you have a hard time making the transition, or was it pretty easy for you to make friends?
The neighborhood I lived in when we left Roger Young Village, Pacoima, down to earth people with middle or lower level income. So everybody was giving and not pretentious, and went to a Catholic school in San Fernando, which was 3 or 4 miles up the road, and heavy Hispanic, mixture of Hispanic, Italians, Irish. A couple of people had suffered in the Holocaust or were in concentration camps, excuse me, uh, at the beginning of their lives. So we were taught by nuns, and they were very conscientious uh, and caring, and certainly wanted you to do your homework and
Hmm.
learn from their experience. And uh, under Harold group of people, the Catholic nuns, you don't see too much of them anymore, but they were the educators at the time.
Hmm. Who is an influential person in your life when you're a teenager? That's a formidable time in your life. Was there any particular person that stood out as a mentor to you, somebody that influenced you in terms of directing you or helping you?
A teenager living in Pacoima, my family. There was one gentleman in the neighborhood that took a likening, getting a little hoarse. Is this over yet? Just,
I
um,
have just begun, Tony.
he was uh, he used the word in talking about character and how important that is in someone's persona, if you will. Character and encompasses so many different virtues, if you will. So it's easy to talk about things like that, like this character, but if you don't embody what are the attributes of having good character and just talk about it, you're paying lip service. Uh, However, it's very important to me. And people may say, well, you're not the nicest guy. Well, I don't know if that's how widespread that is, but I am aggressive. Uh, and that does come from New York for sure.
So that's where it came from. It was, are you saying it's part of your DNA, part of your nature? Do you think to be straightforward and be the person that you are?
Definitely. And
And you were like that when you were, a teenager in high school and so forth. How did you get along with other kids in high school? Were you as direct as you are today?
uh, I I went to a high school after we moved from Phoenix, excuse me, from Woodland Hills. My father found a home that was on the west part of the San Fernando Valley, uh, and Pacoima was on the east and low income. This was an upgrade, I guess, in terms of the income level. And getting back to your question, I would go to the high school in San Fernando. I felt comfortable. But when we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, my mom wanted to continue going to a Catholic education school and went to a school named Brophy College Prep that was in Phoenix off of Camelback Road. Long story short, a very high income group.
Hmm.
people, and
Mhm.
uh, I felt like I was a miscast or an
Mm.
and
But
even
you figured it out. It sounds like you figured it out.
well, particularly when the priest who was the Jesuit head of the prefect of discipline, when you talk to him, when I would talk to him, he'd make faces like, "What are you trying to say?" Purposely to put you on the defensive.
Mm.
That's my perception, and it lasted my whole life. Uh, and he eventually became the chancellor of
Mm.
USF, which is very prestigious. Stopped basketball, and they were famous for national championships, USF, Bill Russell, et cetera.
Mm. Mhm.
But it was a good experience. I worked while I was going to school. I played some baseball and basketball primarily up until junior year. And then I needed a car, so I had to work to buy a car. And I worked as a busboy. And that was a great experience interacting with customers who, most of them were level-headed people and not pretentious and looked down upon a busboy.
And this was in Phoenix that you had was
That's
this your first job that you were working as a busboy, or what did you do before that?
I delivered papers at 5 a.m. in the morning in Pacoima, and I got terrified about when dogs would surround me. So my mother started driving me at 5 a.m. in the morning, delivering the LA Times or the another Los Angeles paper. But that was the beginning of working. And ever since that time, I've always had a job and
Mm.
saving money coming from my mother, saving money, putting it in the bank so she could later on take $1,000 out of it to buy herself a shawl, a mink shawl.
Wow,
But she did it without my permission, but I was happy to allow her to do that. And
that's great. That's great. So when did you end up leaving home, either to live out on your own or go to college, or what came after what brought you independence where you were actually able to do what you wanted to do as a young adult?
well, we were living out in Woodland Hills, nice home, and the house was getting crowded. So I moved out around 17.
Really?
I have children, two adult parents in a four-bedroom home. So it got crowded. I would sleep in the little den and a couch that opens up. And so I said, enough. Moved out in an apartment with a friend of mine. And I was, at that time, I got into UCLA and I was driving there and had an apartment. And I started working in 64 while I was still trying to finish school, did not, 90 credits, and started working for a beverage distributor as a,
Hmm.
so this
So
is
how old were you? How old were you when you were
21,
20? You were 21 years old and you're living on your own then. Were you still have a good relationship with your parents after you left?
of course, and I would go up there on the weekend and have the Sunday traditional Italian feast, but it would routine meal, routine habit of and enjoying it. And we'd all get together and have a lovely meal on Sunday.
So so you're 21 years old, you're living on your own, you're working for a beverage company. Had you met Pat yet, or what was your social life like?
My personal life,
No, your social life.
my social life was uh, living, let's see, let's word this in a way that it's not offensive. Yeah, to watch a lot of Italian movies, and there was a famous director, fellow Fellini,
Fellini?
Federico Fellini, and uh, and there was a beer commercial that was very prominent about you only go around once in life, so you grab for all the gusto. So gusto could mean a lot of different things to different people. I took it pretty literal, and so I had a life of gusto, uh, had a lot of fun, and social life. It could really be expanded, the whole experience, and I lived to the fullest, whether that was good or bad, depending on uh, what you perceive as being the fullest or maybe excessive. How's that for dodging the?
That's very good, Tony. That's very good. So, at what point in your life were you blessed to have a person such as Pat come into your life that you chose to spend your life with her? How old were you at that point?
I was married once before with a lovely girl, young girl, when I was around 23,
Mm.
24, and married her too young because I was grabbing for the gusto, and stayed married because I had been raised in a way that if you got divorced, you'd be semi excommunicated
Hmm.
from the church that you were going to for all these years. It was very formative years where when you're exposed to whatever you want to call them, rights and do's and don'ts of the church, uh, and maybe misinterpreted. So, as an excuse, it's not an excuse, it's reality. I stayed married too long.
Mm.
Uh, at the same time, getting back to or get addressing a question about Pat, and we've been married 43 or I should ask her, but 44 years. Now Mario's 41, about 44 years,
Mm.
and great lady. Uh,
How did you meet?
she was working for me for the company that I worked for, a beer called Olympia beer from Tumwater, Washington.
Mm. Hmm.
And I got transferred there from Los Angeles. San Diego is covering Southern California for this company, Olympia Beer, which was very popular in the 60s, and met her. And she was working for the company and been together ever since.
Well, you have two children. You have Mario, as you mentioned, and Gina. Tell me about the day that your firstborn Mario was born. What do you recall that day? And what was your feeling?
Uh, Mario was born in Clearwater, Florida,
Hmm.
and I was up in Washington at a meeting and flew back to Florida. My memory is correct, and Patty had driven to the hospital, and a boy. We didn't know what gender it was going to be, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And here comes Mario. My sisters called my wife when she was in the hospital after had given birth to Mario, and they were trying to dissuade her from naming him Mario. Uh, Maybe that shows a little of their pretentiousness. I'm sorry, girls, but name him Kevin or Keith or some non-Italian Hispanic sounding name. I think that came from my mother a little bit. When you are poor and you're moving along and you get to another level of income or wealth, some people they try to emulate that other side, if you will, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
I had an aunt in New York who had a very strong New York accent. This was my father's sister, and one of six. And she would speak very New Yorkish, but at the end, not at the, yeah, she tried to speak in a way that you could not tell that she was from the Bronx, but it sounded so affected that it almost sounded like she was from Britain. And
Mm.
kind of funny. What's that have to do with anything? That when you're poor and you're moving up, sometimes you have a different face and you forget where you came from.
Okay, so now with your daughter Gina, who was born how many years after Mario?
They're 35, 6 years apart.
6 years apart. Now, father-daughter relationships are really special. What's unique and special about your relationship with Gina?
Well, special is that she appreciates me as a father, a caring, loving father who supported her in her different endeavors and coached her a little bit, but she's I call it LKA, Lady Kick-Ass, the original self-starter, uh, teaches herself, voracious reader, uh, got her master's from Northwestern and has pursued the UX UI platform and just recently got a certificate of completion from Stanford in the
Mm,
AI field. So
mm.
she she's awesome and uh, aggressive, but in a pleasant way, and has done very well for herself. At 35, married a great guy, Kyle Osborne,
Mm, mm,
who
mm.
is a plumber. And nowadays, plumbing and the trades are held
Oh,
in higher esteem than maybe 20 years ago with people, oh, he's a plumber. But this guy's awesome, hard worker, and they have a great marriage going. They got married in October.
that's great. So, okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit and ask you some questions that might go a little deeper than these.
How deep do I have to go?
Well, you can go as deep as you want. Here's one that is something that is always a reflection of my own. What dream, what's a dream you still have for your life?
A dream?
Yes, a dream, a hope, a desire for your life. And what's a dream you've let go of?
Well, I'm dreaming that when I am cremated, that she doesn't urinate on the ashes.
I can tell that your sense of humor is a good way of avoiding the question.
No, I will get the dream that I have for my wife is that she continues to be who she is. She's a special, awesome person with a phenomenal personality, and she's genuinely concerned about people, does not harbor any ill will or talk negatively, uh, contrasted by my personality. And she's a great teacher. She taught the children early, read to them every day, and as a result, both of my children are voracious readers.
Hmm.
She's a great mother, great wife, and hope she stays healthy and continues to be the great mother and wife that she is.
You know, every relationship has its conflicts. There's certainly no shortage of people going through parting. How did you and Patty, how do you and Patty handle conflict? And how do you reconcile during those times of conflict?
Good question. And uh, when you see that arguing causes a negative effect on the other person, and uh, you have to say, let's try to be a little calmer to yourself and not overreact to minutia, which most of the arguments are about that. And so that recently, I guess when you get older, you start thinking, well, this is not the way I want my wife to think of me
Mm,
later on and have a high level of resentment.
mm,
It's terrible.
hmm.
So,
During your marriage, Tony, again, this is from a legacy standpoint. What's the hardest news that you've had to receive and then deal with in your life and your marriage and
wow, that's a heavy question. How did I, uh, the hardest news in my life? That's an easy one. When Mario got hurt in Costa Rica, and as a result of an accident, he became a quadriplegic. Here's a guy at 20 years old, loving life and uh, very good athlete, soccer player at Point Loma Nazarene as a freshman, played on the varsity, loved surfing, played basketball, uh, and really enjoyed life. Very popular guy at Carlsbad High. And when we found out, in fact, I got a call from one of his cousins who was on that surfing trip in Costa Rica and called, and I flew back there. So the fact that Mario has taken this, and the doctor who was a Costa Rican, when I went there, he used the word, this is a traumatic accident. And he was Hispanic. And traumatic, I didn't fully appreciate the trauma that was involved. So they did identify him as being a quadriplegic, uh, in the hospital, excuse me, in a wheelchair. And when we visited him, right when we flew from Costa Rica, landed in Montgomery Field, I was on the plane with him, being fed morphine because the pain was dramatic. And they did what they had to do at UCSD. And another thing in retrospect, whoever the douchebag doctor was at uh, UCSD has the idiocy and stupidity to tell Mario 2 days when he's in the hospital that you will never walk again. I was there, and I'm happy I didn't uh, punch him out because you don't need whoever whatever uh, philosophy that doctors may have to say that it's wrong and you can't even justify it. Oh, let them know now and it'll seep in. That's not how you do it. And I don't care what kind of a doctor would say he's a proponent of that. But how did I handle that? Only because my son is so strong and did everything necessary to lead a normal life and be successful at it gave me relief. But to today, my heart's broken because of that. And he's a great guy. You know him. Very proud of him. And he
You know,
does.
the word that that doctor you mentioned did not talk about is the word hope. Um, and that word, I think, is a word that you embrace. And I believe that in some regard, in some respect, it is, and it was, your hopefulness that contributed to Mario's strength, to his courage and his resourcefulness and his creativity.
I,
It seems to me that it is part of your contribution and your legacy that uh, gave that hope that was so important in those early days of after Mario's accident, that propelled him and encouraged him to become the person that he has become 20 some odd years later. So I think that's part of your legacy, which I would offer up as part of your seed that you planted within Mario.
I don't know, and I appreciate what you're saying. Mario is motivated. Uh, he had been a Bible reader, and he even got closer to the Lord, the Bible, Christianity, altruism, uh, and motivated by that. That was the biggest contribution to his success in dealing with this traumatic experience. And he is a great example and uses that closeness to God, meeting people like you, not to get overly dramatic, who's a very supportive, inspirational man, and a number of people that have been so supportive that has motivated him. His wife is a very beautiful, talented, supportive. So God bless all of you people for providing that support and not have him dwell on his physical condition. And it's very gratifying. And I'm,
Yeah, they what you say is really resonates. It certainly appears from an outsider's perspective of my own that you, along with Mario, were affected by his injury, and it's impossible for it not to have affected you and his mother. How have you been affected by the way Mario has dealt with his injury?
Uh, Backtracking a little bit, my wife, Patty, uh, is a saint and very caring, inspirational. When we remodeled our home in Carlsbad to accommodate his disability, she forced Mario and kept inspiring him or motivating him to leave, and not, and that was big.
Mm,
So her influence
mm,
that gave him the confidence to move a couple of blocks away here in Carlsbad. In fact, in the house that Mario owns, and
mhm,
it's awesome.
mhm. How about you? How have you um, been changed by Mario's situation?
I still dwell on it and question why. And some people would say, and this is a religious overtone, if you will, if God is so great, why would he allow this to happen?
Hmm.
I don't believe that God would allow this to happen. It's a circumstance. It's an accident. So getting back to how I've dealt with it, broken heart, but proud of how he's conducted himself and what he's done and some of the skills that he has and the friends that he's connected with, like yourself. When we had that 40th surprise party, so many of his friends attended. And if I started naming a few names, I would leave a lot of people out, and I don't want
Mm,
to do that if this ever gets out there. But genuinely sincere, loving people people that have donated significant amount of monies to get this farm going off of 76, the Bonsall Berry Farm. And a part of it uh, is giving and feeding. There's a euphemism from poor, but the reality is there's supposedly 600,000 poor people in the county, San Diego County, and they and Marcos Mejica and Ryan Simpson's his partner in Bonzo Berry Farm, along with the Agrarian Institute, uh, are really helping feed the poor in produce and fruit. And that's I'm very proud of that. And the association he has with he belonged to the Barnabas Group, if I'm not mistaken.
hmm.
And they've been very supportive and friends and neighbors. In retrospect, when Mario first got hurt, you talk about a lot of negative people in the world that there's so many great people. I raised 100 grand for him to go to a rehab just from on the phone emails. Same thing's happening with this farm because it's altruism at its best, in my estimation. So
Generosity and altruism. Yeah, exactly.
my so when all of this is happening, it's easier to accept the fact that my son's in a wheelchair.
Well, my original question was, how have you been affected? And I think you've just explained some of the aspects of your own perhaps perspective uh, may have changed. I don't know. I'm kind of reading between the lines, but your contribution with respect to the 28 acres out there is part of your doing and part of your generosity and altruism. So I think that's an example of how you perhaps could have been changed, your perspective of generosity and altruism for the food insecure and for families in the community.
Thank you.
You know, when you think about Mario and you and Patty being surrounded by friends during the time of that news that you received, how about you personally? They say that you are who your friends are, and for good or for bad. During times I know when I was under bad influences of people around me, but over the years, I've realized the importance of friendships. And sometimes those friendships change over the years because people get older, circumstances change, people move away. What about in your own life, Tony? Now you've moved from Carlsbad to Bonsall. Have you been able to make new friends out in Bonsall and anyone that you could call at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah,
aside from your family?
I I've made one of my neighbors, very interesting Marine ex-pilot in the Marine, excuse me, an airline after he got out. He's a very good neighbor, even though he's very annoying and with his some of his habits, but I don't overlook him. I'm talking about him. And the guy at the gym, another veteran. So friends are important, and I have a cousin in New York, the epitome of generosity, Patty Boy Dadino, uh, pharmacist, beautiful man. I had an uncle that was very close to pass not too long ago, who wrote a memoir of the family, and I would call him every Saturday for the last 3 to 5 years and just talk about his perspective and the stories that he had that were very interesting. So friendship's very important. Family is, but the immediate family is the most important. They're my friends, and I may be intrusive in wanting to come over or having them come out, try to bribe them. Hey, let's get together once a week at our house. Then I have lunch and just uh, I do a little bit on mortality, even though I've been blessed with good health. Uh, Tried to live a full life. Going into is it the last inning? There was a book similar to that theme that was given to me by uh, a relative that kind of hit me a little too hard. I actually slammed the book down and kind of being humorous. I don't need to know that it's the last inning. There's more to the theme. How do you finish out your life? I understand that, but uh, being reminded of it uh, is a little too deep for me.
Well, sometimes there's a reason why we avoid talking about those difficult
Hmm.
subjects. One of the subjects is the difference between uh, success and significance. when we're younger, as a generalization, we're striving for stuff. We're striving for material things. Um, and is that success? Is that significant? Because as we know, as the old cliche goes, you can't take it with you. So significance, at least in my mind, as I've gotten into my 80s, significance has been more of a focal point for me than success. How has it been for you?
Well, to talk to you've done a great job in focusing and making this time significant in what you're doing. These, whatever you want interview uh, is beneficial, certainly to me in appreciating more what I have. And a guy like you, the philosopher, Japanese Hawaiian philosopher, uh, I've benefited with the time that I've spent with you and trying to emulate how you are. And thank you. So, uh, is that's part of answering your question? What's important, uh, material or substance? If you have material things, and we've been comfortable, uh, substance is more substantive for sure than material things. That's
Your son told me a Indian philosopher's mantra some years ago. He said, "Blessed are those that plant seeds for trees, under whose shade they'll never sit."
hmm,
That's been something that has stuck in my mind over the years and is a motivation for me to focus on things of significance because I know those people that I talk with, mentoring or whatever, is the equivalent of planting seeds for trees under whose shade I'll never sit. I mean, I don't plan on, well, I'm hoping for the best, but God has a plan for our lives. At least that's the way I believe. And there are moments that I realize even more urgently that I want to plant those seeds for those trees because time is running out. And I know that um, that's something that you are doing right now with respect to your um, participation with the Agrarian Institute and the Bonsall Farm, which I think is a legacy and are is planting seeds for trees under whose shade we'll never sit. But there'll be thousands of other people that will benefit by your planting of those seeds through your son Mario. So I
thank
think
you.
that's really, as I would say, significant.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. I went up there a couple of weeks ago when they had the volunteer, and I'm glad we're talking about that. There's a group, a church in the Bonsall area, North Coast Church. They have a giant campus, and their support of what's going on at the farm and the institute cannot exaggerate what they've done. And I went up there that day that they had hundreds of people volunteer, plant trees, and I got overwhelmed, emotional. one of the parishioners at the Trinity Grading Company graded in the most professional agrarian perspective style a significant part of the farm. It's top-notch grading in growing in a way that's very fits all the parameters of organic permaculture and donation. That was a donation, $200,000 to $300,000 that would have cost to have done that. So,
That's significant.
and then guys like yourself and others, and the next time if we ever do this, I'll have a list. But that those people are Rancho Santa Fe Women's Club have donated a significant amount in supporting this. These are from an area that's quite affluent and very generous and beautiful people.
One of the things as we get on and we can close in a little bit here, but I wanted to touch on because it deals with what we started off with talking about La Familia, La Familia.
La Familia, my good buddy at Monson, he loved that term, and he's a high-ranking fellow who created this $1 billion, $60 billion company, believed in La Familia strongly.
Well, I would also put the word in. Maybe it's not one or the other, maybe it's both. But the underlying issue of that word, the Italian word, La Familia, is
And
love,
it's
is love, is
love,
love.
for sure.
And with respect to love, there's the definition of what a person calls love. There's conditional love. You do this and I'll do that. If you love me, I will love you back. Unconditional love, which from a faith perspective, if you're a follower of Jesus, is a slightly different aspect to love. And Jesus talked about loving your enemies, which is counterintuitive to our secular view of love, where we don't love our enemies, and yet we're called to if we do have faith. So this is a long roundabout question of from a legacy standpoint. In other words, what you would want to be hopeful for that you pass on in and for your next generation people of uh, grandchildren, 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 grandchildren. In other words, in 100 years from now, a message of what your definition of hope would like to be, not necessarily that it is, because I believe that we're all on a journey to doing what love requires, which isn't easy to love our enemies. So I would offer you the opportunity to speak to those future generations as to what your hope and definition of love would be to see in them in that 100 years.
It's, it's a great question and a deep subject. But things that we've already discussed are the most important things. La Familia, providing direction and hope, and building a character for your children or exposing them to things that would hopefully build a character. My children have that, whether it's through osmosis, conversation I may have had with my wife, uh, my wife and myself to the children, but they are good people and are out to help people and generous and provide their experiences. So if I had any part in that, uh, I feel great about myself. In fact, you have me on the deathbed right now, there, feeling good about myself. And this has been more beneficial to me than all the money you're going to make off of this little podcast, is knowing that I am okay and I'm ready to go. But it's a little too early, man. Come on, Ron.
Yeah.
Jesus, you had me in a trance there, and I'm on a deathbed.
Well, God willing, you'll have 20 more years, Tony, to be as handsome as you look
Oh my God.
on June 25th, 2025. So thank you, Tony, for being
I love you,
courageous
man.
and
Yeah.
brave and taking initiative to make this thing happen. So thank you very much, and your great 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 grandchildren, I'm sure, will thank you.
One last thing, though, that has to be brought up. I have postponed meeting with Ron 3 or 4 times, stiffing him and lousy excuses because I really wasn't that enthused about having this done. And he calls and leaves a message that, why did you not meet me for lunch today? So there was no meeting, but I called them, and his conversation with me about the importance of doing this and having this conversation, at least for us and the immediate family, you'd benefit from it. And he went out of his way. Why keep calling? Why? So he laid the guilt on me. Very good. And I'm here today, and I'm once again grateful to knowing, and I love this guy, and I'm looking forward to meeting his wife and his sons out here. And thank you so much, Ron.
Tony, it's been a blessing. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it.